It's time for the big show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Andy Gallo.
And I'm CJ.
And we have got back with us. Barry Pollack has decided to come back and visit with us some more, a little more conversation with Barry. How you doing, man?
I'm doing. If I've been any better, I'd be twins.
Well, no, I was going to say you look like twins, but that wouldn't be good to say. No, you don't look like twins. I was just playing with him. We wanted to have you back in, though. Last time you were here, we talked a little bit about the promotion game and all the different things or people that you had promoted and one thing after another. We wanted to kind of get your take on what you would rather do. Whether it be country promotions, because I know you did both country and rock and roll. So if you had your rathers or dathers or whatever you want to call that word there, what would you rather do, rock and roll or country?
Oh, by the way, you just said promotions is all. He actually was employed by who? By record companies.
He
right?
was. He was. Well,
Major.
I was going to let him go into that.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I think I mentioned the last time that I first started out with Mercury Records in the 1967, and I worked for Mercury for a few years, and I went to work for Capitol. Then I worked for.
I was even old in 1960.
Oh, shut up!
Now. Mercury was, I guess they have quite a few rock and roll acts back in the 60s?
They were, at that time, it was Mercury Phillips. Smash was part of their, and a lot of the country acts, including Jerry Lee Lewis, was on Smash. Oh, yeah. Roger Miller.
Statler Brothers were on there. Yeah.
So they were really big. It was a really big, one of the top labels of the time. Mm-hmm. And then I worked for Capitol. Then I worked for ABC Dunhill Dot. Mm-hmm. And then I worked for MCA. Mm-hmm. And then I worked for Capricorn.
Right. Which Capricorn was a big rock and roll thing, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was that Southern rock. The Allman Brothers, Marshall Tucker Band, all that. Wet Willie.
Right. You had a chance to meet all these guys, too, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was part of, back then, that was part of the promotion man's job was to take these various acts around the radio stations when they'd come in your market area and when they were in different parts of the country to go with them and babysit them.
I guess you can't lump them all into the same basket, but just as a generalization, right. What would you say is the difference between the personality of a country artist and of those Southern rock guys?
Professionalism. I found it always easier to work with country acts because most of them, it took them a long time to get where they were. Mm-hmm. And they weren't going to do anything to screw it up anytime real fast. Mm-hmm. They appreciated everything you did for them, and they were a lot easier to deal with. So many of the rock acts back, especially in those days, were from England, and they were real hard to deal with.
Yeah. We used to call that the British invasion.
Yeah, right. Well, it was...
probably still do.
Yeah, it was easily...
But now some of the Southern rock people were not from overseas, right? Some of them
right. They were homegrown.
Yeah.
And they were homegrown crazies.
Did the rock, did they sell more records than the...
Well, I worked at one time for ABC Dunhill Records, and Dot was part of they distributed Dot, which was a country label. Mm-hmm. They, pretty much back in those days, they had a group called Three Dog Night, and at one time, Three Dog Night was the highest selling rock act out there.
Wow!
They sold more records than anybody for a large portion of time, and so.
And I guess you spent some time with a lot of these guys, both rock and country.
Sure.
So there's got to be a road story or two. I know you told some road stories last time you were here.
Right.
I always like to hear road stories, though, because those
well,
get...
I got one pops in my head, and I think it's worth telling today that with the passing of the great Jerry Lee Lewis, the Killer. And I have a couple.
So why did they call him the Killer?
It was just something Jerry Lee came up with.
It is okay.
And he expected you to call him the Killer.
The Killer. Okay.
That's what.
Okay.
And he, I'll tell one quick story. A couple of them I got that are very good. But
Go for it.
I was friends with a fellow named Bob Claypool, and Bob was a music review writer for the Houston Chronicle and the Houston Post at one time, and he'd come by and pick me up. I owned part of a bar in Houston for a while, and he'd come by and pick me up, and we'd go to different shows. Well, Jerry Lee was playing at, and I was already out of the record business at that time, and Jerry Lee was playing at the Dancetown, USA. And so we went to the show, and Bob wanted to ask him, said, as soon as we got up there, and I took a bottle of Jack Daniels with me, and Jerry Lee and I are sitting there drinking this thing, and he goes up in the small dressing room at Dancetown, and Claypool asked him right off the bat, says, Jerry Lee, I understand you just got through playing a gig with B.B. King in Africa. And Jerry Lee looked at him and said, yes, I sure did. And he said, well, how was it playing a concert date with the great B.B. King? And Jerry Lee cocked that look that he would get on his head and his face and looked at him and said, pointed his finger and said, you better ask B.B. King how it was playing a gig with the Killer. And we just went, whoop, whoop. Boy, he screwed up right off the bat. And then another thing real quick I'd like to say, I was with Jerry Lee in Lake Tahoe one time. And Jerry Lee was playing a gig at the hotel in the theater, and he had was sitting at his piano playing, and there was a heckler that was about 3 rows of tables right off the stage, real close to the stage and close to Jerry Lee's piano, and he kept hollering and raising hell. He kept hollering, everything Jerry Lee would do. Finally, Jerry Lee gets up, pushes his piano seat back up under the piano, slams down the lid on the piano, turns around, walks to the edge of the stage, and looks at this guy, and he looked at him for about 30 seconds. Then out of nowhere, he just commenced to do a Superman dive right off the stage, through the first 2 rows of tables. Glasses and plates were flying everywhere. People were there. And he jumped on this guy and just started pounding him. Right?
Lawsuit.
Yeah, right. But right, he didn't care. Wow. But that was the Killer. That's what the Killer was all about. Not only was he wild and crazy, he was one of the greatest entertainers of all time.
Yeah,
no
doubt. And
anybody that says Jerry Lee can't sing a country song needs to pull up a version of "She Even Woke Me Up to Say Goodbye."
Oh yeah.
And
What made Milwaukee famous?
And tell me he couldn't do a country song the
good
way it should be done.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I have a grandson, Caleb, that plays pedal steel guitar, and that's been on here. And actually, Jerry Lee right now is Caleb's favorite country singer.
Well, how could you? He's
good.
That's the place the boy was raised right.
We were talking about that on the way on our trip from the Piney Woods here to your lovely home.
You tripped.
Yeah, we were talking about Jerry Lee Lewis and how he took he was a little bit just R&B, blues, country, all personified into what made Jerry Lee, one of a kind, and a true legend in the music industry.
Oh yeah.
I've got second thoughts about doing this, but can I tell a story about Jerry Lee? Thank you.
Oh, please do.
We can't go one episode without CJ,
you want me to turn off his mic?
Yeah, without Country Jim telling a story, and I'll always have to look forward to a story from Country Jim.
That's why we've been great friends all these years. We just sit down at a bar stool and tell stories.
Yeah,
Go ahead. I want to hear this one.
Well, Marty Stewart is a person that I never met, but our lives have intertwined, kind of, sort of. He, of course, played for Lester Flatt in the bluegrass world. But as he got older, he got the job of playing guitar for Johnny Cash. And Stewart has got a wonderful book. It's a picture book. He had a Kodak Brownie camera that he took with him on the road, and for decades he made pictures of all the people and places. And so he has put out a picture book. It makes a great coffee table book. I've had a couple of them through the years. And he tells a story about being a part of the package show that had Johnny Cash and Jerry Lee and Everly Brothers, and they did Europe. And he tells a story about one time that they were staying in this hotel, and Marty said he was awakened about 2 a.m. By a knock at the door, and when he went to the door and opened it, there was Jerry Lee Lewis in his underwear with something that looked like chocolate pudding all over his chest. And he said that Jerry Lee said to him, he said, "Marty, give me your fiddle. Let me borrow your fiddle." And he said that he loaned him his fiddle. He said, "By the way, I've never seen that fiddle since." But the other,
Probably got chocolate syrup.
but the other thing, he said they were playing Germany, and that
I'm still thinking about the pudding.
they were playing Germany, and the promoter was just telling them about all the money he lost as they were getting paid by the promoter. And so the promoter was trying to short pay Jerry Lee Lewis. And said that Lewis actually pulled a pistol out of his pocket and told.
This sounds like a Fair and Young story. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've heard a Fair and Young story
Another
like this
Mercury
too.
Records.
Yeah.
But Stewart's P.S. about those stories, he said that, he's been around the block, Cash and all kind of people, but he said that Jerry Lee Lewis was the most dynamic performer on stage.
Oh, yeah.
That
I'm
is.
still on the pistol. What did the guy do?
Gave him the rest of his money.
And the fiddle that they couldn't find,
Jimmy Dickens told a story about Fair and Young. The guy was playing undoubtedly Fair and box before. He said he whooped that promoter all the way down the hall till he found the money. And said,
That's Johnny Riley, by the way, over in the corner. We're going to be talking to him a little bit later on another podcast, but he just interjected a little bit there.
Yeah. We're probably going to delete that one. Dave.
Well, we may leave that in there just for the heck of it. It seemed to pick up. It seemed to pick up pretty good there. So anyway, but back to Barry Pollack.
Yes.
Okay, back to Barry Pollack here, real quick here. So now you're living up in Huntsville, Texas.
Well, no, I was living in Huntsville.
Oh, okay.
And but now I live for the past 6 years. I live in the Piney Woods, in between Crockett and Grapeland.
That's
Texas.
right. Okay.
Outside of a little community named Latexo.
Okay.
And it's in the Piney Woods.
Yeah. There's a restaurant up there somewhere. I'm trying to remember. I know we talked about it one time. That's supposed to have a really good chicken fried steak. I don't know if it's up in your neck of the woods or where.
Oh, well,
it's somewhere up there. I don't
probably
know.
the Davy Crockett Grill.
A little mom and pop joint.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to be supposed to be really good.
I'm affiliated in a little capacity with a place called the Davy Crockett Grill in Crockett.
Oh, okay.
And they have Jim's played there before, and Johnny plays there about once every other month. And
you're affiliated?
Well, I don't own any of it.
Oh, okay.
But I just I book their music there.
Help them book some stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I book their music there, and
Hey, if I wanted somebody to book somebody, I'd call Barry Pollack. Who would you call? It wouldn't be Ghostbusters, I guarantee you that, buddy.
That's good.
I don't do that much, but
Did you have a label that? Did you have a label that had non-musical people or unusual comedians?
Oh yeah, at ABC we had God, I can't even remember his name.
Carlin?
What,
George
Archie-
Carlin?
No,
Archie Campbell, maybe?
No. I can't even think of his name. I've lost. You actually made me speechless. I can't. And this my old 77-year-old brain is fermented. And
He was well known.
Gabe Kaplan.
Gabe.
Oh,
Okay.
We had
yeah.
Gabe Kaplan, who, by the way, Gabe Kaplan
Mr. Carter.
at one time was one of the greatest poker players in the United States. I don't know if you know that or not.
Wow, I didn't know
He
that.
was addicted to gambling, and he was a great poker player. He's played in that World Championship poker.
What was he like as a
Very
person?
nice man. Very nice man. He'd stay at my house in San Francisco when he was visiting the West Coast, and he very nice guy. Yeah, but he did a couple of comedy albums on, and
Wasn't Archie Campbell with Mercury at one time, or was that?
I don't remember. I don't remember Archie being on Mercury. He could have very well been.
Yeah.
We had C.W. McCall.
He did.
that
He,
was
okay, yeah.
doing the truck driving
yeah.
things
Oh,
and all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
You met him?
Convoy.
Oh, yeah.
Convoy. That was the big,
Yeah.
the big one for him.
we had a lot of
Wolf Creek Pass. Well, there were some others too. I can't remember.
I will tell you this: while I was with Mercury, we had a release of a song, and I heard it. They sent me an acetate, which was a pre-production cut of the record, and said, "What do you think of this record?" And it was the song "Tennessee Birdwalk." And I went back. I told him, I said, "Man, that's the worst thing I've ever heard." I said, "I'd be embarrassed to take it in their radio station."
Right, yeah.
Tennessee Birdwalk.
Come to find out, though, that was
A number one smash hit.
Was that Misty Morgan and
Yes,
and something Blanchard.
A young Blanchard Morgan,
Okay, there you
and
go.
it
There
was
you go.
a daughter and father.
Yeah, that's what I was
And,
thinking.
she
Yep.
was the whole.
It was almost like the Kindles. You know, the
Yes,
Kindles
very,
were,
very similar, very
and they were
similar.
with Mercury too, weren't
Yes.
they? Yeah, okay.
Very
yeah,
similar.
okay. Boy, my brain is just clicking. Things are just starting to fly.
It's
Wow,
amazing.
man. This is really weird because normally I can't think of nothing, So I don't know what it is.
it was a real small world. I was telling Johnny when we were coming up here, riding up here, that I said, "You're like Andy." And I said, "Jim's tolerable, but you'll like Andy." I said, "We just found out last time that we actually worked together for a while. It all comes together when you're sitting around talking in a room and you're talking about old times and talking about this. You go, oh my God, I remember
I
you."
know. Well, and that was really funny that we and then of course the more you and I talked
Right.
on the podcast,
Right.
And I remember his name
Yeah.
because when I was working at a radio station over in BCS, Bryan College Station, his name kept coming up. I never met you though. I don't think. I don't think we ever met, but his name kept coming up. He was kind of like an outpost. I don't.
Well, at the time, I lived in Huntsville,
Okay,
and I would commute. And
because you were in sales,
yes,
I think,
and the
right?
fellow
Okay,
that we
okay.
both worked for.
Yeah.
They couldn't. I mean, they had me do everything as far as when an act came to town, I took them around.
Yes, absolutely.
And,
Yeah, I remember that.
So,
And you were working a graveyard shift, right?
I
Yeah.
was working a graveyard shift.
and the fellow we worked for, Benny Springer, was going to use me up as much as possible. He was that way, and I did it gladly and lovingly.
Yeah.
You know,
I had a really good time with Benny though. I worked for him several times.
Great man.
There at that radio station, and then another radio station later on down the line.
is
over there,
Benny
so.
still with us? Or?
He's up in Tyler.
But he's still alive.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
wonderful man. If you ever talk to him, give him my love.
I will. I don't talk to him a whole lot, but occasionally. The only time I see him is when we go to a funeral that's somebody that we knew. It's
yeah, that
horrible,
sounds. Yeah.
but it's true.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, back to Barry Pollack again. Here we go. We're just kind of going around the horn here on everything. But I guess the promotion game, or I call it the promotion game, but it's kind of a
Hard game.
It is because you're calling radio stations, you're trying to get airplay, you're trying to, and of course back in the day, I used to get a lot of gifts. Now it was not payola, okay, but I used to get a lot of little gifts.
Oh, sure.
From different labels. I mean, I got many a letter opener. Really nice ones, that would have Mercury Records or MCA Records on it, or
You still have any of those?
I still do have some of those. I ran across one the other day actually in storage, but it's here, somewhere. So, but just to kind of get back what I was trying to get at, though, but you're just kind of you're trying to feed these radio stations.
Well, that was back in the day that every major label released so many singles every week.
Yeah.
And it'd be anywhere from 2 to 5 to 6 to 2. And you were in competition with so many labels. It was like that was back when the record labels and radio were kings. One couldn't have existed without the other.
Absolutely.
So they learned how to work hand in hand to break music acts. And that's when radio meant everything to the labels breaking these acts. And you'd start a record off in Houston, you'd spread it to Dallas, San Antonio, Denver, Kansas City, New Orleans, and just try to spread it all over America. And that's how the hits kept rolling in.
Right.
You know? And they were in big competition with one another. Well, why should I play this Mercury record instead of playing the Capitol record or playing the Columbia record or whatever?
Yep.
And a lot of it, believe it or not, like anything involved in sales or public relations or whatever, it had to do with personal relationships.
Absolutely. That's what I was just going to say, too.
And you had to, well, I'll give old Barry a break this week instead of Roger Ramsey.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was going to say. And I remember the guys would call me, and I would like go, well, I don't know, man, if I've got room this week, because it was always I always ran a tight playlist.
Right.
We run about 30, 35 records, and that was it.
That's pretty narrow, yep.
And so there wasn't a whole lot of room, but there was occasionally I would do some things, some favors,
It's only human nature.
Yeah, I mean, well, you just kind of, and there's a lot of guys you just have relationships with over the phone. You probably never met them, but you're on the phone with them,
right?
And
you feel like you knew them.
As they say, they're smiling and dialing.
Yeah,
and you just get a relationship with people, and you just want to help them out.
It's
just like me and Country Jim here. Yeah. We get on the phone, and he'll tell me, "Hey, man, guess who I've got lined up to come up here and be on the podcast." And, he paints a pretty picture. So he's painted a pretty picture for me, and that's what basically radio promoters, record promoters would do.
Well, it's like, radio back in the days, and I'm sure you know a lot better than I am. I, at that, programming a radio show. But 1 week you're looking for a ballad. 1 week you're looking for strictly up-tempo. You don't want to hear, your playlist is covered with ballads.
That's
you
right.
don't.
That's right.
It's funny to me, and this is a true story, and I'm sure you agree with this. If you remembered back, like the record of the year every year was always 95%. All these country stations were looking for up-tempo songs. I want a 2.5 minute up-tempo song. I want a 2.5 minute. We need this. We need up-tempo. And I don't want to hear about no ballads, but every year, country record of the year was a ballad.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Somehow, it always that's what people wanted to hear, and that's what made the phones ring. Were ballads, and still to this day, I'm sure.
Ray Price and Johnny Bush and
I mean stuff that you can pat your foot to, yet you can sing along to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I just thought something I want to try. He always reminds me that he does the production and he can delete anything he wants to do.
There you go. And he's proud of it.
But years ago, I interviewed. I was running sound at a jazz festival, and my daughter Leslie says that me running sound is a unique approach to sound to have a deaf man running sound. but I was doing this. I was doing this jazz festival, and I met one of the most remarkable people I ever met in my life. The other day, it was so long ago, I can't remember his full name. I think his last name was Franks, and he had been in New York, and he played vibes. Whatever you call it, xylophone, whatever you call all that.
Xylophone,
on the Tonight Show. And he was very much in demand in studio. He gave me a list of all. It was phenomenal. So I asked him a question. I said, okay, who was the nicest person to you in the studio? Because, he's meeting all these stars. Yeah. And he said Tony Bennett was the nicest person that I ever met. And then I said, okay, let's go to that other side of that coin. And he didn't even hesitate or stutter. He said Barbara Streisand.
Speaking about hard to work with. Yeah.
But he said she was just very demanding, a perfectionist kind of thing about what she wanted. But he said, now, if you want to flesh that out, he said the biggest jerk I ever worked with was a drummer by the name of Buddy Rich.
Oh, I've heard that. I've heard that a lot of times.
So
there's actually a Buddy Rich outtake that floats around, and of course we can't play it on this program because it's colorful, very colorful.
They're on the bus, and
that's the one.
He's condemned.
That's the one. Yes.
Words colorful.
Yeah.
But I wanted to play that with you. I wasn't just telling that to tell a story.
Right.
As you reminisce back with all of the artists, talk about somebody that you thought was just the Mr. Rogers of the music industry, the nicest kind of person, and then somebody that was difficult for you to deal with, and then and you may not even want to mention all the names of some of them.
At this stage, who cares?
By the way, they got to be dead. All right, you can't talk. No, go ahead.
Let's make this short and sweet. Yeah. By far, the nicest person I ever worked with, and was a fella from Arkansas by the name of Glenn Campbell.
Yeah.
Glenn was a very unique man. He came from nothing and became a superstar, own TV show and everything. And to make stretch his story a little bit longer, he came to Texas several times, and I dealt with him. And very, very, very caring person. I remember one time. The radio station KIKK had an auction out at Esquire Ballroom, and they were raising money for somebody, so they asked me to come up with some items. So I asked Glenn Campbell's manager at the time, it was Roger or something. Can't believe I remember that so many years ago. But to come up with some articles. So he came out with a shirt and a pair of socks that Glenn had worn the day before playing golf. And I mean, they were, and he had them framed in a real nice frame with a personal letter.
That was to help keep the smell down off them socks, I bet.
So with a personal letter inside, thanking whoever bought this apparel, and he guaranteed that he had just worn them the day before and all this. So after that happened, I started keeping it, and my mother was living on the West Coast at the time, and I was in Texas, and she had a serious operation, and so I called his manager and asked if he could get Glenn to send her a note or something. And he was her favorite out there, and like many other people, and so about a week later, I get a phone. My mother was still in the hospital. I get a call from her, and she's in hysterics. And Glenn had just left her hospital room. He personally went up there and took her some flowers. And she was in a room with about 5 other women, and they all went hysterical when he came walking in there. But that's the kind of guy Glenn was.
Wow.
He's just a super.
Yeah, I've always heard those kind of stories about him. Never met him or anything like that.
Well, but he was that way. And another quick story I want to tell you: we had a guy that worked for Capitol. At that time, I was doing pop promotion for Capitol, and Glenn was both. He was not only a #1 country act, he was a #1 pop act. And that's how you get TV shows, by the way.
There it is, yeah.
But anyway,
hi, I'm Glenn Campbell.
He was playing the Houston Rodeo, and I was up at a room with him, and we were having a cocktail party at the time, and we had a fellow working for us by the name of Pat Remkus, the fellow, and he was our country promotion guy, and he had never even met Glenn before, and Glenn and I were standing together with a drink in our hands and at the cocktail party, and Pat comes up and he goes, "Hi, I'm Pat Remkus, and you can just call me Country Pat." And Glenn looked at him straight face as can be and went, "What country?" And he was so embarrassed. This Pat guy just went, he just shrunk and walked away like, what
good.
country?
What country? That's good.
I want to make sure that Anita Campbell watches this, listens to this.
That's his niece, right? Or cousin or something?
Cousin, yeah.
Okay.
And whenever he would come to town, Anita.
Oh, man.
But she still promotes his memory and
oh boy,
on
that's
Facebook and
well, tell her I love her.
Yeah,
because I damn sure love Glenn. Yeah. And then let's go the other. Let's flip the coin.
Let's flip the coin.
I had to pick up an artist one time when I was with Capitol, and Austell, and my car had broken down, so I had to. I called them in L.A. and they said, "We'll go rent you something big and go pick up this artist." And her name was Nancy Wilson. I don't know if you remember that. Classy lady, act from get-go.
Yeah.
Well, I went out to Houston Airport to pick her up, and I'd rented a Lincoln. I never forget this. So I meet Nancy at the gate and introduce myself. I'd never met her before, and so we're on our way out to the car. We get to the car. Well, I opened the front door for her, and she just stood there. She didn't get in. So I went, what the heck? So she walked to the back door instead of this big 4-door, and I went, pfft. So I opened the back door, and she got in. Well, I guess she thought I was her driver or something.
Were you holding up a card? Nancy Wilson? Nancy Wilson got a card.
She was a class act. She not only a beautiful woman, but was the sweetest singer in the world.
Yeah.
But after we rode for a while, then we stopped someplace and she got in the front seat. But she didn't, she put on this whole air about her that I was supposed to be.
The driver.
Yeah, whatever.
So nobody ever treated you like a jerk?
No, I can't remember. All people pretty much treat you the way you treat them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I never was really in awe of meeting anybody. And I never was. There was a few people, but but I always seemed to get along with everybody.
Yeah.
But some of those in some of those southern rock groups, like when I was with MCA, Leonard Skinner, they were full boogie to the core, So they were pretty hard to deal with. And the Who, they were
Who?
They were pretty hard to deal with. Believe me.
Yeah.
I don't know. You guys probably heard the story years ago. In Houston, they had a big party for them at the Galleria, and they had a bunch of ladies up there, dancing ladies and stuff that showed up. Did you ever hear the story? Everybody got thrown in jail. I mean, they just,
oh wow.
They loaded everybody
That's
up.
what you get for having dancing ladies. You don't do that. You don't do that. Well, Barry, it has been a pleasure to have you back, man. I tell you what, believe it or not, time has just slipped right on away from us. But we'll probably have you back some more. There's more stories in that head of yours.
Believe
I know.
Me, there's lots of stories, and the amazing part of it, they're all true, as well as I can remember. And it's always a pleasure seeing you and Jim.
Sure.
You're now working with Johnny, an artist named Johnny Riley.
Yes, I sure am. And, if I could take the time just a few minutes to say this, I've been pretty much retired from the music scene for a long time. I got back in when I owned a place called Borski's Tavern. I think I'm about to talk about Borski's.
Oh, yeah.
And we had live music there 6 days a week, and it got me back to prove my love for music and musical artists, live music. And then when I got rid of Borski's, I'd been retired for several years, and
retired or tired?
Both.
Okay.
Tired of it, yeah.
He eventually got tired of being retired.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired.
There you go.
I met a young man. I say he's young. He ain't that young. But anyway, everybody's younger except Jim over here.
I'm older.
By a year or 2 years. But anyway.
And he don't look it, though.
But I met a fellow by the name of Johnny Riley, and I heard him sing, and to tell you the truth, I was blown away. And I'm not easily impressed. And I'm a stickler about several things, one being professionalism and one being talent, of course. But you can be as talented as all daylights if you don't have the professional attitude about you and you don't conduct yourself right. It's not going to happen for you. Mm-hmm. Well, I got hooked up. I met Johnny, and we spent one evening together, and I just expressed my feelings to him, and I said, I'd like to be your manager, and hopefully we can put something together that's great. And he said, come on, let's do it. So we've been working together for how long, Johnny? About 2 years now? Somewhere about that. And sometimes we get a little mad because things don't happen as fast as we feel they should be happening.
Sure.
It's just like human nature.
Oh, yeah.
But this man is loaded with talent. He has got the goods. And if you ever get a chance to come out and see him, please do so. Do yourself a favor. Or
better yet, you can just tune in to the next week's podcast because he's going to be on there and he's going to play. He'll play a song or two for us, probably some original music. Yes. So we'll do that. So so people will have a chance to hear him.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come be a part of this.
It's always a pleasure, Barry. I tell you what. So it's very good. Well, man, hey, take care of yourself.
Thank you.
And we will see you folks on the next one.
Adios.
God bless.
Thanks for listening to The Big Show with Andy Gallo and Country Jim.
This has been a Unicap Media presentation.